contained in the Maryland Annotated Code. It allows a jury to consider all levels of murder based on that indictment. The first count in the indictment is for the murder of Mr. Dominique Williams, and the second is for the murder of Mr. James Johnson. The third count in the indictment is for attempted murder, and the victim in that case, or the attempted victim, was Michael Thomas. I think members of the public following this case recognize Mr. Thomas survived. He was not injured in the shooting, but he was the driver who took the two injured parties to Prince George's County Hospital after the shooting. The next count in the indictment is first-degree assault. Again, the victim in that case is Mr. Thomas. And then there are three handgun offenses. Under the law, when a person commits a crime of violence, you are permitted to charge separately a handgun offense for each separate and distinct victims. So we have 2 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder, 1 count of first-degree assault, and 3 handgun charges, all related, 1 to each of the victims. In a completely separate indictment, the defendant has been charged with an assault against a Sierra Ford that occurred on May the 6th at precisely the same address in Takoma Park. There are 2 counts in the second indictment. The first account is first-degree assault against Sierra Ford, and you're going to be given copies of the indictment, and you're going to see that specifically what makes this a first-degree assault is that a firearm was used in the assault. I think publicly many people have already seen the video, so you know what I'm talking about. But again, what makes that a first-degree assault is the use of a firearm. There is a second charge against Mr. Dixon for that event on May 6th. And again, the same victim is Sierra Ford. It's a second-degree assault, and that charge specifically within the body of the indictment says to it pepper spray. He pepper sprayed Miss Ford during that same occasion. So there are 2 total counts in the second indictment, 7 total counts in the first indictment. As many of you have been anxiously waiting this announcement, the paperwork is literally being processed. I do not have, I don't have a scheduling order. The court, they're working feverishly to put this stuff together, but I will have probably within the next couple of hours a scheduling order that will tell me when the initial hearing will be in this case. I do believe, and I'm not here to make that announcement, I do believe that Mr. Dixon is represented by private counsel, and I have been contacted by private counsel. I'm not going to mention his name. I'll let him make the announcement. He's involved in the case. And as all of you know, there are several attorneys also involved on behalf of the families who have suffered a loss in this case, and we've been communicating with those families regularly. We have already met with them, and actually I will be personally meeting with those members again later today, and representatives of the family. So having said that, that's where we are. I can't give you any more specific dates. We may have that by later today. Again, because of COVID, I can't. Normally, I will say cases like this probably get set in for trial about 120 days after indictment. I don't know what COVID does, and we're back having jury trials. We started them earlier this week. Many of you have been reporting about that. We actually have had a couple of jury trials this week. How quickly we can get through the backlog and then get to these cases, it would only be an estimate, but it's probably going to be longer than the typical 120 to 180 days. So I'll take a couple of questions.
You predicted that this would happen May 7th, a little bit earlier. Is there any...
I really appreciate that question, and I did say that, and I will tell you there's no real secret behind it. Here's the bottom line. When I said that, and we went in, and what we have been attempting to do is to socially distance our grand juries, and we don't bring them in every week. And so while this normally would have been indicted next week, it's not indicted this week for any special purpose. It's just simply the grand jury doesn't meet next week. And in order to meet the 30-day deadline, we had to do it this week. So it was just new information came to my attention. We didn't have a grand jury next week. I appreciate the question, but it's a pretty simple answer.
Can you explain how the victim Thomas, now there's 2 charges, first-degree assault and
attempted murder?
Well, both, can I say, in the case of Mr. Thomas, who thankfully survived, he was the victim of 2 different crimes, attempted murder and first-degree assault. I will tell you, when a jury considers this, he is found guilty of both of those charges, he only can be sentenced for one. They would merge together. He wouldn't get a separate sentence for first-degree assault and then a separate sentence for attempted murder. But we have I think the actions justified both charges, and that's why we charged them. And it'll be up to a judge or a jury to determine whether or not we have sufficient evidence to convict them of those things.
There's been some reports of a car or cars actually being broken into. Is anything going to happen to?
Let me say, I have not ever made a public statement about that. I do not anticipate any action being taken against Mr. Thomas, the surviving individual in this case, for the activities out in the parking lot. That just is not something we've not considered that, and I don't. That's not going to happen. We're going to focus in on the lives that have been lost and handling this matter.
There was a third incident involving Officer Dixon in D.C. in July of 2020. I know he hadn't been charged for that, but is it possible there could be further charges in that?
May I say I am familiar with what you're talking about, and I'm not aware of there being a pending and criminal investigation. Obviously, it's beyond my jurisdiction. We're looking at it, but again, I don't know the specific answer to your question. I am not aware of there being a pending criminal investigation, but we will be communicating with the D.C. authorities who generated that report. We're in possession of the report. We just haven't interviewed the officers. As a matter of fact, yeah, we are.
If you're through with your questions,
if there's
on
no
the
more
first
questions
matter?
about that, I'll talk about Mr. Crawford's case. All right.
And I'll be passing out paperwork on both fronts momentarily.
Did you say 7 or 9 counts?
7. There's 7 counts in one indictment, 2 counts in the other. If you combine the 2 indictments, you get 9 counts. So just, may I say, again, John McCarthy on behalf of the state, I'm here to talk about David Michael Crawford. Mr. Crawford's age 69. He lives in Ellicott City. He is a former law enforcement official for multiple agencies, including Prince George's County and Laurel City. He was charged yesterday by the grand jury with a 6-count indictment, and I'm just going to, you will receive, because these are public documents, some of you already have the statement of charges from prior news. We have them again if you don't have them from before. We also give you copies of the indictment, and I'll just very quickly go through the 6 counts in the new indictment. And as many of you probably know, and I'll just say this first, in Mr. Crawford's case, Mr. Crawford has pending matters in 3 other jurisdictions. There are already indicted cases in Prince George's, Howard, and Frederick counties. In addition, we are now the 4th jurisdiction. I will tell you, there was a Lieutenant Moe who actually led the investigation from the fire marshal's office here in Montgomery County, that if you read the application for statement of charges, it's his work product. I mean, everybody's working together. There's great cooperation. We are here on this matter today. I'm going to anticipate a question. Who's going to go first? I will tell you, I think Howard County most likely will go first. They had attempted murder charges within their indictment, but we were all cooperating. As a matter of fact, that group of prosecutors from those jurisdictions and others, the Attorney General's office is working with us, and members of other counties are working with us. This is really a collaborative effort, and we'll set a priority. But again, if you were asking me, I would say we're probably going to start in trials in this matter in Howard County. All right. Of the 6 new charges returned by the grand jury, the first event relates to a September the 5th, 2016 arson at a home in Clarksburg. First-degree arson carries 30 years in jail and a maximum fine of $50,000. The victim, the house, the owner of the house, which was unoccupied at the time, was his stepson. That is outlined in the application for statement of charges. The second count is on the same date. It's for September the 5th. It's another arson. It's another first-degree arson, carries in it an additional 30 years. That was an adjoining home. That home was occupied. And that home was occupied by two individuals. And as a result of that home being occupied, when the fire was started, it started at one home, it spread to the other. There were two houses burned in this single fire. That's why there are two arsons. Count 3 is a reckless endangerment because the adjoining home to his stepson's home had two occupants of that house. They were home when the fire broke out, and therefore, as a matter of law, their lives were recklessly endangered. And so count 3 is for the reckless endangerment of those two individuals in the adjoining house. Count 4 is another first-degree arson, but that occurs on September the 29th, slightly more than 1 year later. We are moving ahead a year. It's September the 29th, 2017. It is exactly and precisely the same home that was burned in count 1, the September 5th arson. It's the same house. It is the home of his stepson in Clarksburg. They were not home at the time. However, the same neighbors that were home at the time of the first fire were home at the time of the second fire. So count 5 is a count of reckless endangerment for the same two individuals who were named in the earlier reckless endangerment. So that's charges related to the first, and now this is where in September the 29th. And then finally, count 6 is a second-degree arson. That occurs on November the 17th, 2020. The victim's home in that instance is the same son-in-law. It's not the same location. The first two fires were at the same residence in Clarksburg. They moved, and then there was a third fire at the new residence. And the way the houses were designed there are townhouses, and behind the townhouses, there are separate structured garages. This fire, count 6, was an arson of the garage, and the garage had some substantial damage. It's a second degree because it was not the dwelling, but it was a structure on the property that was burned. There are no other charges from the November 17, 2020 case other than the second degree arson case. And again, the victim in that is his stepson. If anybody has any questions, again, we are cooperating with other jurisdictions. This is an investigation that is in as many as 7 or 8 different counties in the state are involved in this. And again, I want to thank the Attorney General's office. I can tell you that there has been some cooperation with the Attorney General's office of bringing everybody together so that we can collaborate. We've done some joint meetings with one another to share information. It's been a wonderful collaborative law enforcement effort from people from around the state to work on this case. Okay. That's it.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. I'll pass out. Let's do Dixon first, and that way you have it.
That's why I'm back. I'll put it on the board. Thank you.
I got this is Dixon. I'm going to firefighter. All right, and now Crawford. Crawford is a bit thicker because it has the indictment plus charging doc.
That's what they're gonna say about him when he's in jail.
He's
He's a
bigger.
little thicker.
So Ramon got on fire on it. That staple fell out, so I'm assuming I got everything.
No, the staple is way at the bottom. I did that on purpose so you can read it easier.
Okay.
It's stapled up top and it's actually it's hard to turn. It's What's going on? No. All right, we're swearing.